You went to this morning?
7-Eleven.
No, went to Chevron. However, you know what the address there was?
What's that?
Take a guess. It's not written on your left hand.
666.
But the numbers were inverted. So that's actually off by one. So there's 10 5 stars.
Yeah.
However, there's
you know what the 666 means? 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons. It's actually what it is.
It's a holy number.
It's a carbon. I'm a carbon atom.
Yeah.
That's all it is. I know exactly how many neutrons I have, how many electrons, and how many protons.
That's my buddy Doc. my buddy Doc Carter got his Harvard MBA. He's OBGYN.
So do you know what actually the Antichrist is? And I'm gonna break this down for you, and then you can give your opinion. And I've spent years and I spent a few years studying the Kabbalah tree of life, and it actually does take quite a few years to actually master it, because each sphere is a challenge within itself. When you're starting with understanding Pluto, then knowledge, understanding, wisdom. But it's funny how knowledge is...
What planet have they numbered Pluto as?
The first one. You know what brought my awareness to the... First of all, if you want to tell my audience who you are and who you're talking to, so that way, because any given day I could be talking to any spirit.
That's right. I agree with that.
So
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but people are who they are.
As the magical magician, they don't know if I'm coming as the fallen angel. Well, they know I'm a fallen angel. Of like, my whole ad-lib is I don't fuck with the living, I only fuck with the dead.
Take card for I'm already dead.
Because I've learned that the dead listen to me. The dead, they listen to me. But people really don't die. It's all about the chakras. And so it's funny because you have a yarmulke on and I actually have a turban on.
Well, my rabbi says this is from eating too many Islami sandwiches.
You're still a shit. You're still a shit sandwich, just not a soggy one.
Yeah,
right. See, that's why I don't go to church. So like, wait. What did you say about Paul? Because I was there.
I fell into the admonitions of Peter.
Huh?
You never heard Peter Rabbit?
Peter Rabbit?
Yeah,
he was silly.
In Easter egg. It's like, why do they want to fall into the admonitions of Apostle Paul? Why can't they fall into the admonitions of Peter?
Well, from what I've gathered, from my beliefs and what I've gathered, okay, so when I read the Bible, I knew I wasn't Jewish.
Well, why do you say that?
I know I'm not. Like, when I saw Moses, I was like,
Moses married a Nubian woman.
Okay, so when I saw Moses, I felt for Pharaoh. Like, as an empath, I feel for Lucifer. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? I know the devil's job, so I'm just teaching people the devil, Lucifer, and Satan are not the same.
Make me do it. I did it on my own volition.
I tell people they're not the Trinity. It's only one Trinity. The devil, Lucifer, and Satan are completely 3 different people. Like, they have nothing to do with the Trinity. Like, the full gospel is a part of the Trinity, but has nothing to do with it.
What's the difference between the number 3 and 4?
4 is complete, 3 is halfway. Because I'm looking at all 4 squares, right? So it's like, really 3 is a circle. It's still nothing but the 4th part of a square.
That's not mine.
I know, that's mine.
Mine died many moons ago.
I see Nikola Tesla is here. But I've been studying particles. I know the element. I've learned through the journey. I've learned through the abuse. I've learned through the pain. I've learned how to call spirits. I never had a problem in building relationship with spirit. It's what spirit am I going to pick this day? My mom used to be like, okay, sit down. Who are you today? Like, where did you come from and what did you bring back? Like, I really knew the power when Yahweh was like, he was like, be careful how you land. You know what I mean? Like, you could land too hard. You know what I mean? Like, grounding is really a technique. I choose not to do it because it's the only time I ground out is when I cash out.
Have you ever read the...
When I go to the bank, that's the only time I'm grounding, paying bills.
Have you ever read the Talmud? The Talmud?
The Talmud? No.
I read the Persian version of the Talmud. It was a blessing since I was 16 years old.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that blessing until I was 31.
Okay.
And then it took me another 9 years to realize that I actually understood something that other people didn't understand.
Just live long enough, son.
Right.
You'll get it.
Then this morning when I was driving, I saw it was my sister's family this morning. She adopted 3 children from Haiti. One of them died on the soccer field. And she had this nonprofit called Children of Haiti, or Hands of Haiti. And you know, my father's just Spencer, so he's related to those people. And so he doesn't mean anything bad by it. It's just the way that they joke. The challenge is, and the same thing did happen to him. But however, over a period of time, he just looks at people and say, "That's." You ever seen the movie Boiler Room?
No.
So it's a movie about this call center that eventually shut down or whatever. But they didn't do anything wrong. They did the same thing as everybody else did. They just have the specific authority. They actually did have the authority, but whatever regulator wanted to make a specification or an example out of this one group of whoever they were, it was unfair in my personal opinion, but it is what it is. And so what ends up happening is that during the scene, he's like, he's got this college kid, and he's working 2 or 3 jobs, and he's complaining and all these things. And the actual guy that owns the shop is working 90 hours a week, figured out everything, trained everybody, all of his ideas, and he's like, and the kid comes to complain from him. He's like, why don't you just hire more people? He's like, well, I did last week. He says, you still can't handle the job? There's no rest. I mean, it's 1 or 2 hours. My brother's at Elite Special Forces or whatever. And they trained him to get
Chuck Norris.
Chuck, that's right. He was trained him to get 1 hour of sleep and all that nonsense during survival school in Washington State. The challenge with that is that he wasn't a wrestler. He quit. So it's not necessarily the person who's has more capacity or more innate skill. It's the person who just basically shows up.
That's the half the battle is to show up.
But it's showing up according to who? It's like, do you show up according to yourself, or do you show up according to somebody else, what somebody else wants you to do? And as being subjugated under a family, who I was under the auspices of the protection of some sort of family, not this family, but my actual family. And then it's just kind of like, well, at some point, it's like, well, they face the same challenges that I might face running my own shop. It's just it's a time scale, and so it's 6 1/2 a dozen, and so it's like, well, I'm going to probably sell to the same people I've always sold to, whoever else will buy. Like when the stock market's ready to crash, they sell everything to everybody, and it's like, who are we going to sell to? The same people that have always bought. And so the markets are there. It's just how the distribution takes place, and it's a challenge because there's brand identity that goes along with things. So, in an effort to create the separation between brand identity, one could be either ostracized or.
Are you speaking on Revelations? I'm like, this sounds familiar.
Because outliers are true, and it's actually true. But at the same time, it's like there's a limitation to where, you might be able to predict the future 20 years, but how are you going to convince anybody until it happens? Nobody's going to want to make a decision on something 20 or 30 years in the future. They're going to want to make a decision what's going to happen when they walk out the door. But that's next to impossible to predict.
They live day by day.
That's how they like it. They're too scared to realize that they don't have a full conception that one day, according to the theory of relativity, I'm already dead. Whether it's whether I die today, whether I die 90 years in the future. So what matters most? The pain that my sister felt, that my father didn't fully give her credit for, when one of her Haitian children passed away, because that was her actual daughter. And she was married, and one of her children died. And what am I supposed to do about it? She doesn't care about her own blood family. She does, but she's like, well, it's your responsibility as an American citizen to do all the things according to America. I was like, well, on the surface, it seems like you're getting more wiggle room to people people who, it's the same argument everybody has. And so, where do funds get allocated and according to what? I mean, the internet gets blocked all the time for all kinds of people, especially if you're deemed as a hacker. I've been vetted by the anti-terrorist unit of Las Vegas because of my buddies in Iran, and because I know too many Jews. And 99.9% of them are actually terrorists themselves. We can't tell them that. It is what it is. My personal opinion on the nation state of Israel is it's a non-valuable piece of land. It was invented without full knowledge. My personal opinion. I don't get the death penalty for my opinion. My opinions can always change. The land was bought from the English, and so it was for the sake of protectionary measures against the proverbial Muslim Brotherhood, because we already know that at some levels they will leave millions of people in abject poverty, not looking on. They just don't care, and it's next to impossible to realize that. It's one thing living in crashing an entire city, right, or a wayward city, and not giving them funding and let them overbuild, and then cut all the jobs so they can't buy all the overpriced real estate, and they crash their entire economy. Because it happens in Nevada basically first. The people, it's not that difficult to do. But when a righteous person who studied their entire life doesn't get their fair share based on their years of study, it's like, what's up with that? It's a little bit unfair.
It's because it's on the person's effort, and two, also it's due to genetics. It's due to what your parents did before you, and your effort. I mean, and their effort. There's certain bloodlines that have access to the knowledge due based upon.
Well, I'm a Crip. I'm not a Blood. I side with the Crips. I understand the Bloods, but I'm more of a Crip.
You're more of okay.
My family side is they're Illinois, so they're Chicago and all that stuff. I was a West Coaster.
Okay. All right. So God is a Crip and the devil is the Blood. That's what you say.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's a frequency to me.
Frequency. That's where I was going. I was actually getting. Okay. So there's frequencies, and also, would you say that frequencies are directed by genetics as well?
Well,
or there are different frequencies. Or let me say it like this: the level of frequencies can also be based on your genetics and your development of your DNA.
That's true. It's true and not true. I mean, if you could take any Jew that has an innate IQ of 190, or any Muslim with an innate, or any English person or any black person with an innate IQ, the intelligent quotient is technically a validated test, but it's the best that some people can do to try to understand intelligence levels or smart levels or whatever. So, given the limitations of those kinds of understandings, if somebody with a lack of resources and they can let them wander out in the desert, and their intelligence levels would be true and not true. There's value to wandering, meaning you realize who you are and your innate gifts versus not.
I mean, you don't really find out who you are until you are part of nature.
I'm a cold Italian pizza.
You're a what?
I'm a cold Italian pizza.
A cold Italian pizza.
Yeah. That's all I am.
Well. My grandma, her first husband was an Italian man, and he was a part of the mafia. We actually are very directly to the fifth family, to the five families. And back in Harlem, my dad came from Harlem, New York. And so my grandmother, she was a brujo, she was a witch, a kushma. And so on my dad's side, and what she did was, she was from Puerto Rico. She was an orphan. She was adopted. She ended up migrating to New York. And Luciano Cheese that worked with Al Pacino and the Gambino family. Okay, well, she picked numbers for him. She did like protection work for him, kept him out of jail. That was her first husband. When she had, because he
Well, the
was.
question is, why did she put him in jail? Sometimes that's the safest
No,
place.
she kept him out of jail with the magic that she did. Like she would do spells, he would do crimes, and run numbers. As far as, I mean, it was organized crime. That was the mob. So she would do spells to get him to keep him out of trouble. Like he would have less trouble to deal with because of the spells that she did.
We train unto death, meaning
Basically, it was witchcraft. So she
we
worked
train
with
unto
it.
death unto death, meaning so when death, because death happens to us all. We train unto death so that way.
Well, do we really die? I don't think we really died because we're all connected by chakras. And your pineal gland is really your ALU, your pineal gland. And so your vessel, this is just a vessel. We're really just particles. Particle is nothing but the smaller subatomic amount of an atom. And then we get into a vessel that's filled with carbon and electromagnetic waves in order to operate on this land that we call Earth, which is nothing but electromagnetic field.
Let me ask you a question. Now, if I was to have,
That's why we have electrons, protons, and
if I
neutrons.
was to ask one of these people to heat up this coffee to an unacceptable level and accidentally spill it on my leg and it causes a burn, do you think I would be able to sue effectively for $10 million? Or do you think the courts would block that lawsuit? The answer is the courts would block the lawsuit.
Because law is corrupt.
Law, it is what it is.
It's about who has the money.
Or sometimes who.
But as masters of alchemic practice, when you know the terminology of law,
Yeah.
and you combine that with science, you can metaphysically change as so below as above. But there's cause and effect. That goes by what Nipsey says. We're not the cause, we're the effect. So I'm definitely not the cause, but I can be. I can switch it either or because my mind is very powerful. That's why I know how to manipulate miracles. That's why I know how to do certain things with what I know how to do, because I understand the concept of nature and science. The problem is, what am I going to do?
Well,
Who am I going to help? What am I going to become? Am I going to leave my super ego behind? As a star seed, am I going to leave my ego behind? Or am I going to embrace the love?
Let go my ego. What the heck?
Let go my ego. There you go. It's a waffle. You know what I mean? It has many ridges.
It's like Steve Prefontaine. You ever heard this guy named Steve Prefontaine of Oregon University?
But see, that's why I embrace Eligio the Most High, regardless of how you might feel about Nature Boy. I embrace his teachings because he's the one that volunteered to teach me love. You know what I mean?
Does that exist?
It does. Love is a feeling, you know. And as an imp, as a devil seed, who is gonna love an imp? My own mother that you assigned me did not even love me. She just embraced her responsibility. You see what I'm saying? She just embraced. Now my real mom, of course, you already know I'm a conjured spirit. I'm a conjured particle. You know what I mean? I know who I am. It's just the problem, and I think anger management has been helping you putting me in that.
Well, see, that's admitted. That's all those psychological babbles made up in roughly 1920 to 1930. Most of it's been developed.
Well, the confusion is
it's actually good to embrace anger.
The confusion is we never felt like you didn't love us as fallen angels. The confusion is like being able to practice our magic, what you deemed as witchcraft. And why would you give us a gift? And I know why, but we're going to utilize our gifts. You know what I mean? And that's why we left the order. That's why we left. I've learned a few things along the way. So Cain didn't have to kill Abel. All he really had to do was ask for help. You know what I mean?
They weren't human. They were technically reptiles.
They were demigods. And we felt like, as demigods, we know our power. And that's why it's distorted. That's why we were falling here to regain and relearn.
Well, the question is, it's asking the people who will, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but at times I have to admit it, because I didn't create anything that I see here. None of it.
That was all a figment of our own imagination.
I didn't create the technological, none of the concepts that I learned, no matter where I learned them from or didn't learn from, weren't my own. I didn't build any. I read it in a book, or I talked to a person, or whatever. So there's this sneaky realization that no matter what I want, there's still going to be. It might not. Somebody else might know what's more ideal.
Based upon their subconscious and how they were raised, their ethics, their morals, their values, their ideas, their beliefs. You know what I mean? That is developed but also programmed. Not programming is programming. Not teaching is teaching. But what are you teaching? See, you have the ability to teach hate, and you also have the ability to teach love. But hate is easily adopted. That doesn't have to be learned. How to do bad doesn't have to be learned. What comes natural, what's obvious don't have to be explained. But what has to be taught is right from wrong. What has to be taught is if I hit you, if I just slap you, right? Why in my subconscious mind would I violate your personal space?
Well, because somewhere along the line, maybe, perhaps not, you realize that perhaps I could handle being hit, or the
no, it's because people violate other, and this goes back to the Sakura Chakra, which is today. It goes back to ethics, the book that you're reading, Student Manual Philosophy 101. I am philosophy.
James Chester from San Jose, he wrote about George Washington. It says all presidents are truck drivers. This is a simple logic guy. This book bores you to tears. That's all I can count it now, but we started off with this. So it says somewhere in here, it says all presidents are truck drivers.
All what?
All presidents are truck drivers.
All presidents, how so?
Well, it's an example in logic, simple logic. It's false logic. It's learned. It's still good to learn logic. And then he says George Washington was a president. Therefore, George Washington is what?
A truck driver. Because truck drivers go on a journey. They're actually kind of leaders, almost like scouts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Caleb was a scout. You know, he was the dirty spy, but, you know, he veered and wandered along the way, you know. But it's just all about philosophy and how you was raised. It's like, okay, slavery wasn't about abusing you, and slavery was just a title, like Christ is a title. Christ is a title of an awareness. When you are aware, Christ is the highest state of awareness that you could possibly be.
What does Christ mean?
Christ is a state of awareness. It's the act of being aware of. It's the all-knowing.
I used to this lady who used to work with her way back in the day. Her name was Jill. Her last name was Christ. Her name was Jill Christ, and her husband had cancer. And now she's an accountant. She's one of their chief accountants at Facebook. And she's one of my personal friends. I deleted my Facebook account in 2013, which means, in my personal opinion, what's going to happen is there's going to be each person's going to create their own Facebook. It's going to be called the Countenance Book. So face is just an irrelevant concept. It's like, what's the countenance? And so they're simple concepts, but it's only for the modernization of. The question is that science still is much, in my personal opinion, way far behind the ancient wisdom. The challenge is that people have this admonition or this perpetual, for the sake of slavery, to get everybody to be a scientist, so that way they can fit into some predefined role. And that's not a bad thing, because it's good. That's my personal opinion. That's good for most people. But there's always been a percentage of people where that just has never worked for them. And so there's the reason why I mock George Washington is because I have that right to mock George Washington. Because who lost the war against the Muslims?
Who, George?
We sent them packages, and they know that.
But yeah,
That's when they get very afraid. I was like, look, my father's one of those. My father got fired for reading a Freemason book out of order. Nevertheless, sometimes some groups, in my personal opinion, have created their own order. And the answer is that we don't know who wins.
you don't know the orders. The orders are secret, but you do know. You just have to.
I threw away the protocol bag because that protocol was subjugated by people that were completely out of order. So I had to make a new order.
Yeah, that's true. You made a new order, and we made one too.
It is what it is.
That's so below is above.
That's how it's supposed.
But we was like,
isn't that a better order? I mean, come on, let's get real.
Yeah, but
I mean that's like, I would have put the cream in there, but I didn't need to.
you have the angelic order, and then you have the Goetia order. Yeah, but you control the master of the masters. Because Solomon was still on the angelic order, so you know what I mean? It's all to the good though. But we control earth. You have no dominion over earth.
That's what they tell me. Yeah.
That's because you don't deal with sin. That's why you made Jesus.
That's why I don't mind the Catholic understanding of things, is because I found that I went through so much pain not following the Catholic tradition that I basically said the avoidance of pain is ideal. And so people often are admonished to do thus and so, and they don't realize that all they're doing is walking into more pain.
So what you saying, Michael Jackson is better than Prince? Are you serious?
Well, I know Michael. My best buddy is with Michael Jackson. Same thing it is.
Because we've been having that debate, and I refuse to believe that. I don't like Michael. I don't channel Michael. Michael tries to channel me, but I don't channel him because my mom tried to give me away. My Babylon mom, she tried to send me off to Michael, like before he died. So I'm
not a fan of Michael Jackson. Neither was my buddy. I sided with Kenneth Starr.
Huh?
I sided with Kenneth Starr.
Kenneth Starr.
Yeah, he sold bookstore to door for out of a company called Southwestern Book Company out of Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
He was the prosecutor.
Okay.
My buddy had lunch or dinner with him and his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And he sued Time Magazine and Google and won. Nobody wins against Google and Time Magazine, but he won.
It's not hard to win law cases.
It's very difficult.
Not really.
Law cases.
No, it's not.
International law cases is next to him.
I've had an international law case and I won it. It's not hard.
How did you do that?
And I haven't even gone to law school.
What about that lady Abrams?
Johnny Cochran taught me how to write a mitigation.
I don't doubt that.
See, when I channel, I tell you, I come from very old magic, but I'm creative with it. I've always been creative, being Haitian and Creole. I know my voodoo power. You know what I mean?
You speak French?
Very little. I'm learning. I got to get back on learning my French. I've been more so on Spanish. So just because my initiation with that aspect over in that area, so I've been really on my Spanish. But I need to get back on my French too.
I'm Spanish.
I can understand it more than I can speak it though. It's weird because Papa, they didn't. Okay, the rule of thumb with American Creole kids, it's like they don't teach us Creole. It's because they spoke it so that we can learn our place and not be in adult conversations. So it took me the longest to learn Sapase, and you know what I'm saying. I know.
I like being a kid too. It's a lot more fun.
I know the aspects, the voodoo aspects of French and Creole, but as far as I need to learn the conversational aspects.
Well, what's really a conversation?
The good thing about Creole is that, or French, it doesn't have any conjunctives, right? Like you don't have like Spanish does, that has the ear, the tu eres, the solver, and
I don't know my own language.
I think I know more than you, right?
Yeah.
But I tell people God is interchangeable. He's numbers. He's not language. these numbers. Numbers is the only universal language.
Now, let me ask you this. You know the difference between a growl and a fake laugh?
Frequency, energy, vibrations. It's like when you say something and you can feel that shit, you don't have to say anything and be in the room and know you're not wanted.
The Rambam says, who's a Spanish rabbi, the ability to get extremely upset at somebody and cause them damages and be completely normal.
I know where you're going with this because you're trying to figure out why I almost broke somebody's hand yesterday.
Right.
Because he stuck his hand in my pocket. You don't do that. You don't stick your hand in nobody's pocket.
Right.
So when you cross the boundaries, you have to realize that there's repercussions to pay for it. And I told him, and I told people, I said, this is what's happening. I'm going to stop this right now.